Gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Leon Sandler, the Executive Director of MIT Deshpande Center for Technological Innovation. He will present the topic, Technological Innovation, Commercializing University Technologies for Impact, the experience of MIT Deshpande Center. Mr. Sandler, welcome to the stage. Welcome to University of Cyprus.
You have the sound.
This is my bearer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's great to be here today, and I'd like to thank the University of Cyprus and also the Center for Entrepreneurship for inviting me here. The American Embassy for sponsoring my travel to Cyprus and for all the good hosting they've done since I've been here, and also special thanks to George Sabaradis, who came to visit me at MIT and also has been a gracious host as I'm here in Cyprus. So I'm going to talk today really about what we do at the center that I run at MIT called the Deshpande Center, and maybe that will inspire some of you and you'll be able to see what could be possible here in Cyprus. So let me jump right in. So what is the mission of the center at MIT? The mission is really, what we want to do is create impact through technological innovation by using MIT technology to really solve real-world problems. What that means is we want to take technologies that are in the labs at MIT and move them out into the world and into the marketplace where they can have an impact. What we're also trying to do is to actually stimulate innovation at the university as well. So let's talk a little bit about technological innovation and what technological innovation is. So if we look at technological innovation, there's a spectrum. If you look up at the screen, you'll see on the left up there's design-based innovation, and on the right is research-based innovation, and in the middle is engineering-based innovation. And so design-based and engineering-based innovation, what you're doing is you're really using existing technologies in new combinations to solve problems. So you see a problem, you say, how can we solve this? We'll come up with a new design. We'll reconfigure some existing technologies. On the right is science-based or research-based innovation, and here you actually have to come up with new technologies as well. So you've got to develop some new technologies to actually solve these problems. And the space that we operate in is over there, really around developing new technologies. So it's a combination of research-based innovation and also some engineering-based innovation. Now, if we look at the essentially the area of research-based innovation, it's very difficult to do. This is hard. You're pushing the frontiers of maybe physics, chemistry, biology. It takes a long, long time to get to market. Takes a lot of money, but it has a huge, huge impact on society. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about what I call innovation pathway. So the engine at MIT, the engine for innovation is really research that's going on in the laboratories. What happens is the researchers then interact with the market and they see real-world problems. So they interact with the market and they see a problem, but they have very deep, deep knowledge of their technical domain, and they say, wow, I think I can come up with a solution to that problem. I can use the technology that I know to come up with a solution, so they come up with an invention. Now, I just want you to think for a minute, how long does it take for somebody to come up with an invention? So the answer is, the process of inventing takes a matter of maybe minutes or hours, or at the most days. Inventing is fast. So coming up with the invention, it's sort of seeing that, here's the problem, here's what we can do, I think I can come up with it. That's the fast part. But now you've got to go from an invention all the way to a product and commercializing it. And that is not fast. You have to validate that what you think will work will work. You have to mature the technology. You have to reduce the risk. And this is the innovation process. The innovation process is really about taking the invention, the idea, and moving it along towards a product. And this is the space that we operate in at the Deshpande Center, is really the area of innovation, moving those inventions across. And I'm going to talk in quite a bit of depth about that. So what do we actually do at our center? People have asked me since I've been here, so what do you guys do? Well, what we do is we provide grant funding and mentoring to faculty and students, so we can help them take their technologies and move them along to the point where they can leave MIT and go into a commercial venture. That's what we're trying to do here. Now, let me sort of create a graphic. So here you have the MIT researchers. There's the Deshpande Center. They come along, they're interested. Well, the first thing we have is we have a grant program. We give them some money. We help them with market discovery, understanding the customers, understanding the market, where they're going to go. We have mentors, and so we mentor those projects. We connect them with industry. We connect them with entrepreneurs. We connect them with investors. And we have events to create, like you have just like today, to create awareness and create connections. So I like to say there are really three things we do at the center. We select, we pick the appropriate projects to work with. We direct, we move them in the right direction towards commercialization. And then we connect, we make a lot of connections. So we select, direct, and connect. Now, I happen to be an engineer by training. And so what engineers do is they always start off and they say, okay, what's the problem I have to solve? So let's talk about the problem. So here on the left, you'll see that's academic research going on at the university. But what we want to get to is we want to get to a product. The problem is we don't sell products. The only product we sell at a university is maybe students. But what we need is we've got to take that technology, move it into a commercial enterprise, which is then going to produce the product. So here's the problem. It takes a lot of money in that commercial enterprise to produce a product. So you'll see on the left, for every dollar we spend at the university, it's going to take $10 to $100 in a commercial enterprise before you ship the first product. Especially if it's in materials or medical stuff, it may be 100 to 1. And somebody has to come up with the money. That could be venture capitalists, governments, large corporations, family and friends, whoever. Somebody has to come up with the money. So what do those investors look for? There are three key things they look for. Who's the team? Who's going to execute and make this happen? What's the technology risk? And what's the market risk? So at MIT, we don't worry too much about the team. We have good technical people. We can find good entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. So at our center, we're looking at technology risk and market risk. And what we want to do is we want to take those technology and market risks and see if we can reduce them enough to where this becomes an attractive investment for the investors, where they look at it and we've shrunk the technology risk, we've shrunk the market risk, and they say, you know, if we put our $10 million in, we have some confidence that you will actually develop a product that works and that there will be somebody to buy it. So I'm going to go in a little more depth. Let's talk a little bit about technology and market risk. So what is market risk? Market risk is really, you want to understand, well, what's really the problem you're trying to solve here? What is the problem you're trying to solve? So what's going to be important to the market and customers? And what will the product need to be competitive so that customers will buy it? And you have to really get down into very specific technical performance requirements. Can your product meet these technical performance requirements? Because then people will find it attractive and buy it. Big issue at universities, we're not usually that good at understanding the market and the customers. We believe if we have a technology, they'll buy it. The flip side is technical risk. So now that you understand what the customers really need in terms of technical specifications, can you actually prove that the key technologies will work? And how do you prove that? There's only one way to prove it. You have to get data from experiments. So you have to do the right experiments to get the right data to be convincing that it will work. But not just work, you have to understand what's the performance range of this technology going to be. How well will it perform so that it will meet the market specs? And would it be within the range? So that's reducing technology and market risk. So if we look at the sort of the flow of how this works, what we have here initially, I mentioned we start with an invention. So there's an invention. What we then want to do is take that invention and go through a proof of concept. So this is some early work to show that, yes, this is not defying the laws of physics. We think we can prove it. But then we take it a little further, and we now want to do what we call a proof of product and market. So this is really proving that you could get the technology to work as well as it needs to be, and prove that there would be a market. What I want to stress is this is not building a prototype you can take out to customers. So you don't have to build a prototype to take out to customers, but you have to show these technologies work. So this process happens at the university. Typically, it'll take about 1 to 4 years. And if everything is successful, then a company spins out. That company will then commercialize a product that it can sell. And I mentioned at the beginning, our goal is to have impact in the world. Typically, if it's going to have impact, that company is then going to either grow into be a large company so it can distribute worldwide, or it's going to be acquired. That small company will be acquired by a large company, and your technology and product will now be deployed worldwide. Okay, so that's sort of the process. Now what I want to do is jump in a little different direction and give you some actual examples of projects that have gone through our center. So over here, this is a patient sitting in a dentist's office. If those of you who've had caps or crowns done, this is, shall we say, the traditional way of doing it. The patient bites into this sort of gooey, rubbery stuff, and they create a mold, and that mold can then be used by the laboratories to make the tooth, make the prosthetic part of the tooth. One of our researchers had an idea of how to do it better using some digital technologies, and I'll just jump to the end result. After the innovation, so here's what they have. This is the device. It looks like that sort of toothbrush wand thing. They move that around the patient's mouth. It's taking a 3D, not just an image, but a precise measurement of everything in the mouth, feeds it back. That 3D image, or 3D computer, almost like a computer-aided file, can then be sent electronically to the laboratory, to a machine which can then make the part in the patient's mouth. This is a project we funded right at the beginning of the center, spun out into a company which is now part of 3M, and I'm going to show you just a short little video of this in action. So let's see if we can get that to work. So here you can see they're scanning the patient's mouth. And this is a representation of the image, but again, it's highly dimensioned. Okay, so that was one of the projects. Let me talk about another market problem, which I think most of us are aware of, and that is in the renewable energy space. So the good news is the energy is created when the wind blows or the sun shines, but now you want to store it. So you need some kind of battery system to store all of this vast amount of energy. What you have here is what in America we'd call an aluminum smelter. The English would say an aluminium smelter. This is how you make aluminium. You take aluminium oxide and you have to reduce it to aluminium. It is very, very energy intensive. What you're looking at there is about 2 football fields long. That's how long this thing is. They stick them right next to hydroelectric power plants. So you're putting an enormous amount of energy in. One of our professors in the metallurgy department, who knew this world very well, said, can we somehow run something like this in reverse, where we could put a lot of energy in, but make it reversible so we could take it out? Because this would be a way to store vast amounts of energy on the grid. And so they came up with, I'm not going to go through the chemistry of this with you and explain exactly how it works, but the idea was to have 2 molten metals that float on top of each other. You can charge it, the energy goes in very, very fast because it's molten, you can store a lot of it, and then you can take that energy out very fast. So this is a concept of a molten metal battery. It seems pretty radical. It seemed radical to us, but very interesting. We funded it in 2006. This is the professor, Don Satterway, and his student, Dave Bradwell. The initial prototype is very, very small. They're going through the proof of concept here. That took about 4 years. And then in 2010, they spun out a company called Ambri, and there is their first product, which was launched in 2015. And these are batteries for molten metal batteries that store electricity on the grid. So let me jump into the medical field, because I saw you had different tracks. So here's a problem that, again, one of our faculty came across talking to some doctors across the river at Massachusetts General Hospital, and they said, you know, we have a big problem delivering drugs to the bladder, and essentially what we would like is we would like some device which we can just insert in the doctor's office. It can deliver medication for 3 weeks. We want 3 weeks continuous delivery, and then it's easy to take this out. Non-surgical, just done in the urologist's office. So I'm going to jump right to the solution, not through the whole process we went through. Here is the final product, which was developed, and the company is Terrace Biomedical. What you'll see on the left there, and there's a picture on the right, is it's basically, think of a hollow plastic tube filled with powdered drug. And in fact, what they've done is the powder is actually in little tablets, so they can measure it precisely. So you fill this tube with powdered drug. On the right is the actual device. It's a long tube, and on the top of it, it has a wire known as a nitinol wire. It's like a spring, so it will go back to its shape. You can straighten it out easily. It will spring back into shape. The size, that's a US coin, quarter. It's about maybe, I'd say, 3 to 4 centimeters, so it gives you an idea. So what can happen, the doctor can, or actually just the nurse, can take this, straighten it out. They can insert it through something called a cystoscope, which is a scope they use to look up in the bladder. They just shoot this thing up there. It sits in the patient's bladder. People are unaware that it's there, and it continuously delivers the drug over a period of 3 weeks through what's happening is the water is, this plastic is very specifically designed so that the water goes in slowly through the plastic. It dissolves the drug. There are little holes, and the drug is sort of pumped out through what's known as osmotic pressure into the patient. Extremely successful. The device has gone through various clinical trials, and in fact, a large pharmaceutical company, Allergen, basically bought this whole indication. Okay, let me look around the room. I see a number of you with glasses on. So does this look familiar to you? You know, it's time for your annual prescription. You go there and they have to refract your eye. So that's the, I'd say, the old-fashioned way. In the modern world, here's one of our other little innovations. What you have there is a cell phone. On top of that is a very low-cost optic. It's under $10. You put this in front of the cell phone. There's an app on the phone, and there are two little lines, and you use that little button on the side of your phone. You go click, 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 click till the lines line up this way. Something else goes, you go click, click, they go this way. You do that with each eye, and you have your prescription. So again, really designed for low resource settings around the world. And this is actually, you know, in operation. There's a company, it's called Anitra. This is a chip. This chip is used in cell phone base stations. These are the base stations, which, by the way, cell phone base stations it's an enormous amount of energy. It's I don't know if it's 1% of the energy or 1% probably of the electricity around the world is used just in cell phone base stations. And what this chip does, it does much more efficient power conversion, converting electrical energy into radio frequency energy, which is what you have to do. And again, we funded a project, spent several years with us. It spun out into a startup. They raised money. And then about last year, the big base station company, which actually Nokia does a lot of the base stations, bought the company. So let me give you a brief sort of history of the center. We've been around about 15 years, so we're 15 years old. We've had 500 proposals from faculty that we've done the select part on. We have supported about 133 projects with about 17 million of grants. It's roughly 110,000, 120,000 each. And here are the results. We've had worked with over 400 faculty and students, over 100 volunteer mentors. We've seen 33 startups, companies that have formed, and those startups have raised over $700 million of capital. And here are a couple of slides of just some logos of the various startups. So this is one slide of just different logos, some more logos, and these are the areas they're in. So batteries, cancer therapy, database software, dental imaging, drug delivery, eye testing, food ripeness sensors, medical devices, membranes, molecular diagnostics, power electronics, quantum dots, simulation software, surface coatings, and water treatment. Very, very wide range of products. And now what I'd like you to do is I'd like to, for the next 2 minutes, I would like to actually introduce you to some of the innovators and the people, and we'll play a little 2-minute video so you can see some of the folks who do this stuff. Whoops, before I do that, I never remember the order of my slides. Let me just talk about what we've learned, 4 points that we've learned doing this for 15 years. So what do you have to do to be successful? Whoops, go back. If I can get this to work. You need people who want to solve problems and bring products to market. So to do innovation, this is not people who just want to publish papers and do interesting sort of intellectual discovery. You actually need people who want to bring products to market. Interactions with customers and markets are critical. Critical part of the innovation process. You need an ecosystem around you that supports innovation and entrepreneurship, and you need guidance and mentoring. Good guidance, good mentoring, and that's what we found are the keys to success. Now I'll jump to the video, and let's see if we get this to work. Sound.
Where do my ideas come from?
I wish it was genius.
Ideas come from many different sources.
One place that they come from is actually just talking with people. You learn about what's actually needed, and you see these connections that you might not otherwise spot.
It's kind of a random walk process. You have an idea that excites you, you're trying to solve one problem, and you stumble across something else.
About halfway through my PhD, we had developed a new way of making complex microparticles. At that point, it was an interesting idea, but it didn't have any real application for it.
We had some simple pharmacokinetic models.
We were nothing more than some calculations on the back of an envelope.
I always had an interest in health. So we had started to think of how can we apply these particles to diagnostics.
We got the idea that we could scan ears for fitting hearing aids.
Come up with a battery that can store massive amounts of electrical energy.
Store energy in springs.
Deliver a drug to the bladder of a human over an extended period of time.
A lot of things that happen in research labs don't necessarily turn into companies.
There's always questions around the technical merits initially, but really the key questions come from understanding the market. Where do you take it?
You have to, at some point, jump in and say, I'm going to see this through to that step.
I thought if you have a great idea, of course you're going to have a great company, but it turns out that's not always the case.
Making things happen has got a lot of dimensions to it, and that's why this is so hard.
I'm at a point where I want to see technology get from the lab bench and be of service to society.
It's been such a rewarding experience. I love being a part of a small company. I love going to work every day. I couldn't imagine a different life.
Thank you. So I'm here all day, and so if you have any questions, just come find me and chat. Thank you.